Now with analysis of the aftermath of this month-long synod and the final document and much more, I'm joined by the editor of theCatholicThing.org, Robert Royal, and also from the Archdiocese of New York, Father Gerald Murray. Thank you both for being here. Let's start with this synod final document, which was ratified by Pope Francis this week. Immediate publication was approved, but the Pope will not issue his own separate apostolic exhortation. Father, does the document have binding teaching authority?
Well, that's what the Pope established, that if he approves and accepts the final document of a synod, that becomes part of the papal magisterium, which is quite something because the Pope didn't author this document. So he's taking the words of someone else or a group and putting them, making them his own. A little bit strange because the way the Synod was first founded, the Synod was an advisory body meant to help inform the Pope on his decisions. And now essentially he's saying whatever decision they arrive at, if I approve of it, I'll take the whole document for my own. It is definitely, that's a novelty and an innovation in church practice.
Bob, last week you alerted us to a conference that happened 3 days following the Synod, which really was a synthesis of a rebranding, if you will, of the Synod itself. And they made some pretty bold proclamations there that this Synod goes beyond Vatican II, is the fruit of Vatican II. What does all of this mean?
Well, it's difficult to say. Actually, what they're saying is it's the mature fruit, that actually what they believe happened is that the ecclesiology, which is the theology of the church that was put forward in Vatican II, is now starting to reach, its mature fruitfulness in what that they're doing. And they have this phrase about the circularity of synodality, where Vatican II is interpreted in terms of synodality, and synodality is interpreted in terms of Vatican II. It just seems to me a way to make a claim that there's a there's consequences for what is pretty much a murky document at the end of the day. And it's trying to connect it back to the heady days of the 1970s when everybody was kind of excited about what happened after Vatican II. There's one large insight in synodality, and that is that people should be talking more with one another. But that said, once you look at the final proposals, it's all pretty much plain stuff.
The Vatican, it's amazing. They have this big synod, but the story that has sort of grabbed the popular imagination that Catholics are actually focused on is the unveiling of a brand new anime mascot for the 2025 Jubilee Year. It's called Luce, and it's an androgynous, blue-haired waif, which means light in Italian, by the way. Archbishop Rino Fisichella, the organizer of the Jubilee, revealed this character at a press conference earlier this week. Now, supporters say this character is a fun way to engage the pop culture and young people. I've been told by sources at the Vatican that this is actually a branding and merchandising play. My question, Father, how does this engage young men, which is the real problem for the church today? And if you need a mascot, why not use this one? Father, what did you think when you first saw this character?
No, this is imitating the world that we need, mascots and theme songs and skits and YouTube videos. You know what the theme for the Jubilee year should be? Jesus Christ, crucified and risen from the dead. The crucifix is our focus when we think about Jesus dying and then rising for us. So the risen Lord, the crucified Lord, the Sacred Heart of Jesus, the Pope issued a encyclical about that recently. Wouldn't it have been nice if we had a picture of the Sacred Heart of Jesus as the official logo? But then again, why are we into logos? We don't need logos.
Yeah.
We're not a brand. This is revelation. This is the Church of God. So now, for me, this is an example of the church saying the only way we can be relevant is if we make ourselves relevant. And relevancy means, what do the TV people think is important? What are they going to put on the screen? No, the way we're relevant is we say Jesus Christ is the Lord of the universe. Follow him.
Well, I question who the target audience is for this. Is it, 7-year-old girls? In Japan? Is that the focus? Is that who you're trying to reach here? But to make this a global mascot for this Jubilee year, It's an odd choice. But Bob, the creator of this mascot has in the past created LGBT pride artwork. This is some of his creations. He's also a designer of anime-covered sex toys, which I will spare showing our audience. But Bob, why would this designer be chosen of all people?
Well, as we've seen in the past, the Vatican seems to have a philo-homosexual orientation when it comes to artworks. They've chosen people like this in the past. One priest I was talking with joked that at least it's not Rupnik, which of course would have even been worse than what we have. You know, the thing for me is that we don't seem to be an adult church any longer. You can make too much out of this little mascot, I suppose, you know, and maybe in a way it does some good somewhere. But a Jubilee year is a very serious thing. If you look back at what Jubilee means in the Hebrew scriptures, you know, it's proclaiming the year of freedom to captives, slaves are freed, people return to the land, debts are canceled, they blow the shofar. Jubilee means to blow the shofar. So here we are with what is supposed to be a very deep spiritual adult event. And instead what we're going to get is I think you're right to say, a marketing campaign. And it reflects there's an element inside the church that just doesn't really get it.
Well, I had, you know, a Protestant pastor friend reach out to me and say, Raymond, in the week that they've released a report on sexual abuse of minors, why would you have an elderly bishop touching this little childlike androgynous figure at the end of the table at a press conference? The optics of that are so wrong. And, you know, I had to backpedal and explain what was happening here. But let's move on from this. I want to talk about the final document again and what might be coming next from this synod. It seems like female deacons remain an open question, and there may even be a new mass in the offing. Here's Cardinal Jean-Claude Hollerich answering independent journalist Diane Montagna about women's access to diaconal ministry. Watch.
Number 60, which received the most no votes of all of the document, says that the question of women's access to diaconal ministry remains open. In what sense does it remain open? And especially in light of Pope Francis's comments that women cannot be deacons.
Though the Father hasn't said women will be ordained deacon, he has not said women will not be ordained deacon. He has just said it remains open, it has to be studied.
Father, this just won't go away, this topic of female ordination. Why can't this be dealt with definitively? I thought this was settled.
No, it is already settled. It is impossible to ordain a woman a deacon. If a bishop attempts to do that, he is violating the doctrine of the faith. He would be doing something that's worthy of a canonical penalty. This is wrong. There are no women deacons in the Catholic Church, no matter what the radicals say. And the notion that this thing has not been studied sufficiently enough to arrive at a definitive historical exposition of why there are no deacons, it's quite clear. This is a political move by the women's ordination crowd, and as soon as they get the bishops to bend or the Pope to bend and say, okay, we can have women deacons but no priests and bishops, they're immediately going to turn around and say, you hypocrites, if you can give us the sacrament of holy orders at the level of deacon, you must give us the sacrament of holy orders at the level of priest and bishop. This is a radical attempt to make the Catholic Church in the image of the modern world, which unfortunately is infected with this feminist notion that if women can't do everything that men do, then there's a violation of women's rights. That is not the truth. Jesus Christ and the Church do not violate the rights of anyone when they restrict the sacrament of holy orders to men, because that's the intention that Christ had.
Father, the final document also calls for a synodal liturgical celebration. Paragraph 27 of the final document says celebratory styles that make visible the church or the face of a synodal church is what's needed. Father, it goes on to urge the establishment of study groups to which would be entrusted reflection on this new Mass. Another study group. What the heck is a synodal liturgical celebration, Father?
No one knows, and it has no meaning that anyone can refer to, because it will have to be made up by the people in charge, then imposed on the church in the name of the people. I mean, this is classic bureaucratic way of effecting a velvet revolution. You announce that the people demand that we do something. Then we do it, and when the people are horrified, you say, no, you told us to do it, you must accept it. No, there's no such thing as a synodal mass. Does that mean that women are going to be preaching because now that lay people can vote in a synod, we want lay people to preach at the mass? I mean, and I go back to this. We have people who are being thrown out of their churches because they pray the Mass of the Ages, the Tridentine Mass. And what is the Vatican doing? They're saying we need to rework the new Mass to be synodal, which no one knows what it means. This is chaos in the life of the church.
Hollerich was asked about this at the press conference. Listen.
The style of synodality and the style of liturgy, and how we need to adopt celebratory styles that make visible the face of a synodal church. I would just like to ask what that means.
So we have a liturgy, the one of Paul VI, the Second Vatican Council. The fact is that many people have written at the beginning, when the Synod started in its first and second phase, that they had problems, that sometimes the liturgy did not speak to them. It's just, how can it be a little bit more participatory?
Bob, they've been implementing the Paul VI Mass of Vatican II for over 60 years. It doesn't seem to be helping. But now we need another revision of the new Mass. Is the Amazon Rite study that's in process right now, a new Amazon Rite, is that a predicate for what we could see here with this synodal Mass?
Yeah, I think absolutely it is. I mean, they mention in the document things like lay people preaching and having, you know, all these different roles. I would actually think that in a place like the Amazon, it might almost work. It depends what they come out with, because more traditional societies have kind of a sense of a depth of spirituality. I think that anything that is likely to be pursued as a synodal liturgy is going to partake of this same kind of lack of direction and superficiality and kind of anxious searching after we don't even know what, that was characteristic of the Synod over the past 3 or 4 years. I think it's a very bad idea. The fact that the delegates recommended that there be another study group, that as if, you know, this is something that now may become habitual, that we're going to have study groups about whatever people seem to think they want. I think that's going to take us into just swampy waters with almost no way out unless we just stop it now.
Father, is a new Mass what young people really want? I mean, maybe they could just do a robotic Luce and in every sanctuary, and it can offer Mass. Our own churchy cheese everywhere, I guess. I'm sure that'll excite the kids.
You know, in my life, I've watched adults who are clueless about how to reach teenagers and young adults come up with ideas which essentially say, kids go to rock concerts. Hey, let's make church into a rock concert. You know, kids read Harry Potter. Well, let's reduce religion to the level of that. Kids like to eat hamburgers. You know, let's make the church into a dining hall. I mean, this is ridiculous. We're supposed to elevate people to the level of saying what counts in life is God in heaven. And we're going to bring you up to life in heaven through the Mass and through prayer and sacrifice and charity. Instead of this nonsense, mascots, new masses, come on. I mean, if I'm getting exasperated, forgive me, but this is silliness. After 4 years of supposedly helping the church promote its mission, we're coming up with a mascot and a demand for a new Mass. I mean, this is nutty.
Yeah, well, my question is, where's the study group into the Tridentine Mass, which is actually drawing young people who are drawn to the mystery, drawn to the submission to God and His will, having large families, sacrality, holiness? Where is that study group? That's the only study that's never mentioned, never brought up, and the only phenomenon in the church that's vibrant, that's completely ignored by the people running the Synod. It really is, I got to tell you, it's not only silly and nutty, Father, it's infuriating. Look, I brought this up with the Cardinal earlier, and it bears repeating. Cardinals Cupich and McElroy are pushing for the governance of the USCCB to be revamped, to be more synodal. And now Archbishop Timothy Broglio, the president of the Bishops' Conference in the U.S., is now saying that, quote, invitations to involve the faithful by local bishops is crucial to implementing the next phase of the Synod. Father, I said this at the start of last year's Synod. The goal is to change governance of the church, not doctrine. Am I right?
Yeah, no, this is a very serious point. In fact, this is the most serious threat, apart from the diaconate, to the constitutional order in the church. Governing power resides with those who are ordained. It does not reside with the laity. This is absolutely clear. There is no question about this. We are not a Presbyterian or Congregationalist form of Protestant church where everybody gets together and votes on everything. Now, the idea that the USCCB needs to be restructured in a synodal way, you know, I remember that synodalism means consensus. Remember they said that? In fact, the voting is kind of like something they were hoping they could control, which in a sense they did. But, you know, the idea that the exposition of opposite ideas will produce light and truth, they don't want that. They want consensus. So I think what this is a move to say the American bishops all have to agree on everything, and we have to get some lay people in there involved as experts and join us in it. And that's just going to be a bog down, and it's not the way it works. There is an executive committee, and that's elected by the Mass of the bishops. That is how the thing runs. It should continue to run that way.
Father, when they ratified this final document, the Pope used one of his favorite terms. He said this: rigidity is a sin that often enters into clerics, consecrated men, and women. Father, is rigidity really the problem facing the church now? And what is that code for, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, this is a very serious problem, the use of this word rigidity, because rigidity imputes to people a psychological or emotional disorder which results in an inability to change, adapt, or innovate in their own life, and then they impose that on others. In other words, it's saying if you are a doctrinal defender of the truth, if you are an Orthodox Catholic who will not budge on the doctrine of the faith, then you are afflicted with rigidity. And the implication is, if you only loosened up psychologically, then you'd all agree with everybody and we could all change things as we want. I'm tired of hearing this. I remember hearing this way back in the 70s and 80s. It really is a psychological slam word designed to silence people who do not agree with the liberal agenda in the church. And it should not be used. I mean, all the time we talk about listening to others and respecting them. What kind of respect is being shown when you tell priests who defend the doctrine of the faith, you're rigid, and that's a sin, and you have a problem, and you need to change? That's not dialogue.
Look, I want to make one final point about this rigid, since you brought this up, because we do see some rigidity in the way that they handled it. And rigidity is good in some respects. Look, one of the images that they used for the Synod is to enlarge your tent. Well, if you have a tent, you want the fabric to be flexible, but you want the frame to be rigid. Otherwise, you don't have a tent.
Gents, we will leave it there for now. For commentary by Robert Royal and Father Gerald Murray, visit thecatholicthing.org. Thank you, gents.